Hello and welcome. In 1996, Dennis launched the second generation Dart. They had redesigned the chassis to enable it to be a low floor bus. This was going to be the Dart SLF, SLF standing for super low floor. The chassis featured a deep drop beam front axle and air suspension to enable it to meet the low floor specification. The air suspension allowed the bus to be raised or lowered as required. But as we all know, all good bus drivers lower the bus most of the time, don't they? Initially, the low floor Dennis Dart was available in 9.2 metres, 10 metres, and 10.6 metres. Now, the 10.6 metre is slightly longer than a short Mark 1 Leyland National, which was 10.3 metres, but it was the same length as a short Mark 2 Leyland National. These were joined in 1997 by the 11.3 metre long Super Pointer Dart, which was long Leyland National sized and certainly couldn't be described as a midi bus. In 1998, Dennis launched the Mini Pointer Dart, which at 8.8 metres long was a return back to midi bus territory. Both the Super Pointer Dart and the Mini Pointer Dart were bodied by Plaxton with their pointer bodywork, hence the name. When bodied by other companies, they were referred to simply as the Super Dart and the Mini Dart. Although initially offered with a low floor version of the popular Plaxton pointer bodywork, other bodybuilders were also soon building bodies on the Dart's low floor chassis. These included Alexander with its ALX 200 bodywork, which was popular with Stagecoach, and we'll find out why later on. The Eastlank Sprite, the Caetano Nimbus, which started out as UVG Urban Star and was a direct descendant of the Wadham Stringer Portsdown bodywork, fitted to the early step entrance Dennis Darts. Now, Wadham Stringer was the second body manufacturer to be built on the original Dart chassis, as we found out in the video about the step entrance darts I did a little while ago. I will try to remember to put a link to that video up in the top right hand corner next to my channel icon in case you've not seen it. Other bodies on the low floor Dart were the Wright Crusader and the Marshall Capital, which first appeared in 1995 on a low floor integral midi bus called the Marshall Minibus. That must have taken them a long time to come up with that name, mustn't it? Now, would you believe me if I said that Daimler had built a low floor bus? Well, in 1998, Dennis formed a joint venture with American bus manufacturer Thomas Built Buses to build the Dart SLF with Alexander ALX 200 style bodywork for the American market. This was initially going to be sold as the Thomas SLF 200, but their parent company, Daimler Truck North America, decided to rebrand, and it became the Daimler Chrysler SLF 200. So there you go, Daimler did build a low floor bus. It's such a shame they didn't call it something like the Roadliner 2 or something like that, isn't it? This was originally supplied with a standard Cummins engine, and it was later sold with a Mercedes engine. Unfortunately, the sales didn't meet expectations and it was disbanded in 2003. Where bodied by Plaxton, the Super Pointer Dart, which was, as we said before, the 11.3 metre model, could seat 44, whilst the short 8.8 metre Mini Pointer Dart seated 29, and was designed to compete with the Optare Solo. All the low-floor darts were initially powered by the Cummins B series engine, powering through an Allison fully automatic transmission. This engine was a six-cylinder diesel which met Euro 2 emission standards. However, in 2001, Euro 3 emission specifications were introduced. This saw most buses being powered by the four-cylinder Cummins 3.9 litre ISB engine. The Super Dart had the 5.9 litre six-cylinder equivalent engine, needing a little bit more grunt to shift that extra length. Now, to an old fart like me who grew up with the 10.45 litre Gardner engines and 11 litre Leyland engines, these engines seem ridiculously small, don't they? Almost like someone's pinched an engine out of a Jaguar car and said, let's put it in a bus. In 2006, the ISB engine became available to Euro 4 specifications on the Dart chassis. In 2000, Dennis and Alexander's parent company, Mayflower, and Plaxton's owner, the Henleys Group, merged their British bus manufacturing companies to cut overheads. This was renamed Transbus in 2002, and the Dennis Dart became the Transbus Dart. A further version of the Dart would appear in 2002, whilst under the ownership of Transbus. This would see the development and release of a narrow-width low-floor dart. The original step dart had been 7 foot 7 inches wide, but with the conversion to low floor, this had been widened to 7 foot 10 inches wide. Now, as certain people will tell you, size matters, and that 3 inches could make the difference between fitting down a lane and not fitting down the lane, especially in places like the Channel Islands of Jersey and Guernsey, who have strict width restrictions. Needless to say, most of these narrow darts went to places like the Channel Islands as well as to Gibraltar, and were bodied mostly by Eastlands and Kitano, who built adapted versions of their bodywork. Unfortunately, this was not to last, and in 2004, Mayflower was placed into administration amid accusations of 4 years of dodgy bookkeeping. Transbus was also placed into administration. The Dennis and Alexander part of Transbus was sold to David Murray, who was a Scottish businessman and former chairman of Rangers Football Club. The other two people, who also bought the Dennis and Alexander part of Transbus, need no introduction, unless you've lived on the moon since 1980, and even then they've probably run a bus service up there too. They were, of course, Brian Souter and Anne Gloag of Stagecoach fame. This part of the company that they bought became Alexander Dennis, and the Dart became the Alexander Dennis, or ADL, Alexander Dennis Limited, Dart from 2004. The low-floor Dart was fairly successful in export markets too. Aside from the North American ones I mentioned earlier, it found sales in Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Malta, which featured manual gearboxes, the Netherlands, and Portugal. In 2003, Transbus unveiled the Enviro 200, which was designed to replace the Dart SLF as well as the Alexander ALX 200 and the Plaxton Pointer bodyworks. This first Enviro had the doors at the extremities of the bus, that is, right at the very front and right at the very back. Now, they achieved this by moving the engine to be vertically on the offside, a bit like the Bristol VRL. If you watch my video about the Bristol VR, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. This made it low floor from top to tail, which, whilst common in Europe, is a bit unknown in the UK. Following the collapse of Transbus, only 2 more were built by Alexander Dennis Limited, ADL, before production moved on to the ADL Enviro 200 Dart. Now, this retained the mechanical layout of the Dart with the engine at the back, and this offered 4 or 6 cylinder ISB Euro 4 diesel engine options, and as well as a range of transmission options. The design featured new axles as well. The Enviro 200 chassis was also bodied by MCV with their Evolution bodywork and Optare with their Esteem bodywork. In 2009, Alexander Dennis Limited launched the third generation Enviro 200, and this time the Dart name was dropped. This featured a major redesign of the chassis and running units, and whilst it's a direct descendant of the Dart, it's now its own bus. And the last true Darts were built in 2008. Over 9,100 low floor Darts were built, which is an amazing number considering Dennis's less than optimistic sales projections at the launch of the Step Dart in 1989, when they'd estimated selling 100 a year. Now, my own personal experience of low floor Dennis Darts goes all the way back to 2006 when I was working at Buzzlines of Folkestone. At the time, I was based at the Pfizer site in Sandwich, and we were running the works contracts buses between there and various other places around East Kent. My bus was MPD Dart GX05 AVV, which was a very high specification bus. It was finished in a metallic blue, had coach seats with seat belts and air conditioning, although the air conditioning didn't work because it kept throwing belts. So all through that long hot summer I was sweating. And now, friends, there's something I'd like to confess. I feel now enough time has passed since the event happened and the water has flown under the bridge. And I don't want you to judge me, I just want you to forgive me. 2008 would see me buy DMS 550 MLK 550L, which is now owned by my good friend Paul T. Fleetline and valid member of the Southern Counties Omnibus Collection. However, at that time, the bus was an absolute wreck and was marooned in a yard due to an electrical fault that wouldn't allow it to move or engage gears. There was a huge hole in the front dome where it hit a tree, and an owl had actually taken up residence in this hole and built a nest, and we didn't realise this at the time until we went up on the roof and found the nest with a load of bones in it. So anyway, there was this hole in the roof that needed fixing. And as I said at the time, my bus was Mini Pointer Dart GX05 AVV. So my solution to the fact that there was no ladders or scaffolding or anything like that, or normal way of getting onto the roof of DMS 550 to fix it, was to bring GX05 AVV to the yard in East Kent where 550 was slumbering, and use that as a workstation by parking it up as close as I could to the old DMS. And these are the pictures that I took at the time. Now, I did manage to try and fill the hole in with a little bit of body filler, but the hole was just so big, in all fairness, that it needed properly fiberglassing. And I didn't have any fiberglass with me, any fiberglass equipment with me, so I sheeted it over. However, there was some of the body filler that ended up on the roof of the MPD Dart. So if you worked at Kent Coach Tours and wondered why the roof was a little bit knobbly bobbly, Kent Coach Tours were the last owner of GX05 AVV, I believe, once Buzzline sold it. I do apologise, and that is the reason why. Well, I feel a lot better after that confession, and confessions are always good for the soul, aren't they? My next Dart encounter was another MPD, and this was X Go Ahead Northeast X511 WRG, and this was with Regent Coaches of Whitstable at the time when I was working there as a manager. Now, I was there from 2017 all the way through to 2022 when I moved back down to the Isle of Wight with Melissa. And whenever I used to have to go out to cover a bus route or do a little bit of rail replacement work, X511 was my weapon of choice. And I found it a very, very good drive. It was a lovely little bus. The only thing I did find with the short wheelbase MPD darts was that they had a tendency to seesaw when you was trying to bring them to a stop, and you'd be sort of bobbing up and down as you're sort of touching the brake. That was just a minor criticism. But apart from that, they stopped and they drove quite well. Now you'll notice throughout this video there's various pictures of X511 WRG, and I do apologise for that. And that's my personal collection of pictures that I took of the Dart over my course of my time with Regent coaches. Now, there's twice in my life I've nearly tempted fate and bought a Dart to save it for preservation. And one of the ones that I nearly bought was X511. However, buying a bus is always the easy part, isn't it? And I've got my commitments to the rest of my collection, and I can't go around buying endless buses and hoping they'll all fix themselves. So I decided not to buy X511 and save it for restoration. And it was sold to Yorkshire Buses in, I believe, 2022, 2021. And unfortunately it was subsequently scrapped, although it was getting a little bit rotten underneath, as they all tend to do, don't they? Well, I hope you have enjoyed this video about the Dennis Dart SLF and found it interesting. This, I believe, is the first low floor bus we've done on Classic Bus Histories, and what a classic bus it is. Definitely a future classic, no matter what your feelings about modern buses are, and they're starting to enter into preservation already. If you did enjoy this video, please like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the future releases in this series, and of course my other series here on YouTube. And if you've got 5 minutes, have a look through my back catalogue, so to speak. Nothing rude. But you will find all sorts of bus related videos here for the concerting bus enthusiast of good taste like yourself. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all the new subscribers to the channel that have appeared over the last month or so. It's great to have you here, and I hope you are enjoying the content. Don't be afraid to comment. Put your comments down below. I love reading them, and I do try and respond to every comment that you put on there. Thank you all so very much for watching and supporting the channel. All money raised from this YouTube channel goes towards the buses in my collection and those of the Southern Counties Omnibus collection. So it's a win-win situation. You get bus videos and we get the help to keep our old ladies in their retirement. Again, thanks for watching. Bye for now.